Hello, I'm Lauren Hubele. Welcome to Shamanism, Metaphysics, and Grace, where weekly I get to interview my mentor, Jyoti Wind. Welcome, Jyoti.
Hi, Lauren. Good morning.
I'm very excited to get going on our topic, but I don't want to miss an opportunity for you to open up this sacred space for us and our listeners.
Thank you. Grandmothers and grandfathers of the East, we honor you and we ask for your insight. Grandmothers and grandfathers of the South, we call to you, we honor you, and we ask for the direction that is right for us today. Grandmothers and grandfathers of the West, we call to you, we honor you. We're learning to receive. Help us in that manner. Grandmothers and grandfathers, wise spirits of the North, we ask for your wisdom to know. Grandfather Sky, we ask for your overarching protection in all that we do. Grandmother Earth, you whose body we walk upon, where we place our feet of compassion. Please teach us about our own compassion and understanding. And to that wise woman, that wise man that sits in our hearts, may that being also be present. So I have a short piece on courage. The courage to speak the truth in the face of ridicule and sarcasm, in the face of ostracism, even in the face of death, strengthens the totality of who you are that can never be undone.
Thanks, Jyoti.
You're welcome.
Jyoti, this topic of courage is very timely, considering a number of factors right now. Can you talk a little bit to that, why it might be important for our listeners to consider courage for themselves and their source of courage?
Well, the word courage comes from the French coeur, pardon my pronunciation there, which means heart, which comes from the heart. And so courage comes from the heart, and it comes from your resilience, a person's resilience, and a person's willingness to keep moving forward. And so courage. I mean, there are such different types of courage, small amounts of things in the day to day. Right now, with Mars having just turned retrograde 2 days ago and not going direct until January 12th, this is a time of really looking at one's inner and outer life, tying up loose ends, taking care of old business so that you can move beyond it. And so courage would be part of what's needed now, and what needs to be looked at and developed, and how we can bring more courage into our day-to-day life.
Thanks, Jyoti. There were a couple things you said there that actually really struck me, and realizing that they do need courage, like wrapping up loose ends. How many of us walk around with relationships that are dangling, that we haven't either put closure to, or forgiven someone, or reached out?
And with Mars in Gemini, it's very much about communication. It's very much about having those conversations, even if they look like they might be painful. They may hold gems for us that we can't see going in, especially with closure, especially with our own sense of honesty and truth, and bringing those pieces to the table so that we don't have those dangling participles, those dangling pieces hanging off us anymore. We've brought our energy back in a sense, to ourselves, instead of having loose ends that are avenues of leaking energy. You know, we've kind of re-solidified ourselves, and so having the courage, accessing the courage within yourself to finalize things, make amends, end and bring to closure those things that just kind of pull on us and pull our energy. I mean, that's what would be the best thing you could do at this point in time.
Well, and you've often talked about doors of opportunity. It sounds like this door is open between now and January 12th so that it's supported.
Yes, yes, definitely. And that door of opportunity is open right now for closure, for saying what you need to say, for having those painful conversations, or just, you know, from an iMessage point of view, just saying how you're feeling, what you'd like to see happen. And if the other person isn't willing to come to closure with you and come to agreements, or come to bringing things to an equitable end, there's always independent resolution where you kind of come to things yourself, you know, and make those choices of how you want to see your relationships be.
Right. And then let it be.
And
And
then let it be, forgive it and let it go.
yeah, yeah, beautiful. Jyoti, thanks for taking a moment to give us this framework, because this is a big topic, but the why is very important right now, given this portal of opportunity. So let's go back to that word courage. I know you have a workshop that you formed around courage.
A present day workshop, yes. Gathering courage in a time of change. And it's a shamanic workshop that's based on putting yourself in journey situations that evoke your own courage, where you are asked to sing for your life and to do things that really make you perhaps more aware of your own courage where you might feel lacking. And then I have a workshop that's not shamanic. Um, it's more metaphysical, spiritual, that's based on the life of Inanna, the queen of heaven and earth in the Sumerian tradition. And her legend was that she was called out of heaven by her dark sister Ereshkigal, and left the heaven realms and went to the and did this descent gate by gate into the hell realms to see her sister, and was basically hung on a meat hook to die. And her allies, one could say, came and whispered in her ear, and whispered in Ereshkigal's ear, and she was eventually released. And in the gates ascending, she was given back her raiment and her crown and her power, in a more expanded way as she emerged. And so it's a guided journey, a guided workshop. It's on my free YouTube channel, just under my name.
Nice. So that's a pretty big example of courage, right?
Yes, and Anana's courage, and somebody, I mean, I used to do this as a live workshop. And so I always applauded everybody's courage who came, who felt drawn to do the workshop. because it took courage to show up and see different parts of yourself and surrender or relinquish parts of yourself, parts of your identity, in order to, as Inanna did, go naked into the underworld.
Well, I think that's a good opportunity to highlight that. You know, we have these mythological figures that their courageous journey is huge, but on in everyday life, we're continually invited to garner courage to do something different, to do our relationships differently, or our career a little differently, or show up and work on ourselves.
And to push past those self limitations, those self-imposed places where our fear has more say than our courage does. And so it gives us those moments in time, present another door of opportunity, let's say, to move past the same old, and be willing to try something new.
Jyoti, talk more about the self-imposed limitations, and maybe perhaps you have some examples.
Well, I have a personal example from many years ago. Um, I had been carrying this idea that perhaps I had been murdered for what I had to say in other times and places, and relative to the burning times and the witch hunts and all of that. And I think that some of us as souls really experience that, and some of us carry the like holding the energy of that collective wounding in order to heal in this life, to help heal that collective wound. Maybe we didn't have the personal experience of it, but we've kind of agreed or taken a ring off the hook to work with that particular wounding in the collective. So whatever it was for me, um, it limited me in my own thinking of what I could do or what I could say. But I felt called to do this workshop with people, to offer this. I called it the Descent to the Dark Mother, because it's about owning the feminine shadow. And I had been working that myself as I learned about this legend of Inanna. And so I went through the whole thing myself and created this workshop for people. But because of my fear of public exposure and what that could mean, in my own thinking process, I hand delivered invitations to 4 or 6 women and led the workshop. It was very well received, but I had a lot of fear around it, that it could be taken wrongly, and perhaps I'd be ostracized or persecuted or whatever. It was that collective wounding that I was working on. And so for me, it took a lot of courage. I didn't advertise it. I hand delivered invitations to certain women I thought might be interested. It was great. I continued to do that. And one time I had 19 women and 1 man in the workshop, and I suggested that we all applaud his courage for coming,
Wow. Wow.
because he was healing that feminine shadow within him that one would project out onto the women in his life.
Jyoti, I think it's such a powerful lesson here for all of our listeners. I mean, here you are giving a podcast to anyone that would click on YouTube, and yet there was a time that you were actually afraid to share your truth, even with those you knew.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And I remember the day where all of a sudden that fear of public speaking and public exposure didn't rise up at all. And I was asked to do something publicly, and I just thought, okay, this is the next step or the next piece in my day. I'll go do this. And there was no fear. It was just a natural progression of the day or where I was in my own life. And so It takes time to heal those fears and to push past those self limitations, and it takes courage to do it. And so that's my example for my own life of courage.
Right. And Jyoti, was that the first time you had shared your learnings with a group of people one to one?
Yeah, I was doing astrology readings one to one for years before that, but this was the first time that I invited other people into a more ritualistic, experiential um, ex experience based on a myth and designed to help people face their shadow and face their own fears and emerge victorious in a sense.
What do you think it was that helped you overcome that fear?
There was this feeling in me that, I mean, straight out, there was this feeling in me if I didn't do it, I was going to wind up with cancer. I was going to wind up with some disease that, and I'm not saying that cancer and other diseases are this, but for me, it was very apparent in my inner world that if I didn't push past these fears would create dis-ease and imbalance in my system, and I would get sick. I mean, I was at the door. I was at the door of my own facing my fears and being given the opportunity to push past it. And if I didn't take it, I'd have to wait for that door to open another time in my life. That's how I saw it. But there wasn't even that contemplation of waiting. It was like, life was at my heels and I needed to do this.
Yeah. So, Jyoti, what might you offer to listeners who all may be holding that thing, whether it's reaching out in a relationship or publishing the book of memoirs they have been working on or showing their art, whatever it is that's holding them back, what might you suggest they do?
Well, I suggest that they take those fears and they put them in their heart and they just love them. Because those fears perhaps have kept them safe or helped them learn certain things in the course of this life until they were more ready to take that step, to make that change, to face what needed to be faced. And maybe they weren't ready and they couldn't have held their own in the face of whatever it was that they were looking at doing or inviting in their relationship with someone else. And so we don't want to demonize those fears or make them less worthy than they are. We want to take them into our heart and love them and be grateful that they served us for the time that was needed.
So beautiful because the temptation is to shame ourselves. Oh, I should have that courage. I shouldn't feel this fear. And what you're saying relates to a lot of what I hear in the therapy and coaching world is name it to tame it, right? And call it what it is. It is fear, and then take it into your heart
and
to
and love it and just be great, express your gratitude that it kept you safe all this time.
and early in our talk, you spoke of courage coming from our heart center. So we have
Yes.
this fear we've brought in, we're loving it, and do we transform it into courage?
I think that the fire in the heart and the grace that comes from the heart absolutely transforms it. I know it did for me.
Yeah.
I know it did for me because at one point in that descent journey that I was doing for myself before I offered it to other people, there was a moment in time where I was standing on a hill overlooking the city, And in my mind's eye, I just saw this shadow part of me and in all its array. And I just reached out with my hand and took that energy and just put it in my heart and said, I'm going to love you anyway.
Mm.
And it changed my life.
Clearly, clearly.
Yeah, I mean, it was the beginning. It took years for me to be more outspoken and available, let's say. But that was the beginning, and that got the ball rolling.
So beautiful. And I'm so grateful. I think all of your students have such gratitude for your accepting that invitation to share.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Jyoti, do you have a process or a little guided meditation perhaps to share with folks about courage?
I could, yes. I mean, it would be very simple, very short and very simple. So if we just close our eyes and we picture ourselves, imagine ourselves, trust your imagination, and imagine you're on this slight hill overlooking where you live. And on your mind screen is your fear out in front of you. And it can be personified in the picture of, something old and black and slimy and, whatever it happens to be, whatever your fear looks like when you think of it as an image. And so you express your gratitude for this fear in your feelings, in your mind. You express that you're grateful because this fear, whatever it's been from, whatever it looks like, it has kept you safe all this time. And that now you're ready to move beyond that. You're grateful for its protection and presence, and now it's time for something else. Now it's time to reach out. So you reach out and you take whatever that energy is and you put it in your heart and you sit with that for a few minutes and let the courage in your heart and your heart flame and the grace of the experience just transform that fear into further courage to take the next step, to take that invitation, to step through that door of opportunity that's beckoning you as life does. And so, even though it limited you, it provided something for you, and you can love it. You can love it into its other side of courage, that fear transforms into the courage it takes to take the next step. And you could do this a couple different times. And then just come back down the hillside and come back to yourself.
Lovely. Thank you, Jyoti.
You're welcome, Lauren.
What a rich bit of time we've had together here talking about this powerful word that often evokes fear itself, right? Because
Yes.
it feels so big. And you've shared, why it's valuable today as we're in this period of Mars retrograde. You've shared your personal journey into transforming your fear into courage. Is there anything else you'd like to add for our listeners?
I think that in the human evolution, courage takes us forward. We're always kind of moving, if not physically, we're moving inside ourselves with our realizations and our opportunities. And courage is a part of our makeup. And so we're here to move forward. We're here to evolve. We're here to transform what we've been given as, the story of what life is, by our family system. And at some point in our life, we have to re-examine that and take out what serves us, what is true for us, and just let the rest go. It doesn't have to be dramatic. It doesn't have to have a lot of emotional engagement. We just take out what serves us and continue in that manner. And I think that's where we have the opportunity to really engage with courage. That courage is part of the walk. Courage is part of us putting one foot in front of the other and saying, okay, enough. Enough of all of that. Time to let it go, leave it behind us, and step into our own power and step into our own future. That's why we're here.
So beautifully put.
Thank you, Lauren. Thank you.
So if this has inspired you to learn further with Jyoti, I'd like to direct you to Jyoti's website, Jyoti, which is
JyotiWindAstrology.com.
perfect. And I will.
And the free YouTube channel, on YouTube under Jyoti Wind. There's several workshops, one on self-forgiveness, one on the owning the shadow, the feminine shadow. There's several others, and there's a 4-class intro to astrology as well.
Fantastic. What a wealth of resources there. Wonderful. So I want to invite everyone to have a look at those and reach out to Jyoti directly if you'd like a personal reading.
Thank you.